Great. Thanks, Gordon. Appreciate the feedback. And unfortunately, you probably can see me at the bottom. I think that was a really nice idea, but it gets a little old, so I'll turn the picture off here in a minute. But let's go ahead and get started. And let's see, I got to get to the right little widget here. Aha, that's working. Well, this is me. I'm Vern Bell, and Texas Elite Advisory is a Texas registered investment advisory, if you're familiar with what that is. You have to file with the state of Texas, and they review your stuff. They don't necessarily approve any particular action we're going to take, and they don't pass on whether we're qualified or not. But there's quite a bit of documentation that we have to submit, and it is available online. And I'd be glad to share that link with you if you want to see that. You should always check the data, the information on any advisor that you're considering working with. And I found that to be very, very helpful over time. The way this is set up, on the right side of your screen, you should be able to see a little chat box. I won't be able to hear you, but I do keep my eye on that chat box. And if you have a question, please just go ahead and ask it, type it in there at the bottom. And I'll try to respond to that real time if I can. So here's our agenda for today. Basically, the first part is something I do at every one of these, and I try to do these. I'm trying to figure out quite what's going on with my deal here. Oh, I see. I'm trying to get my my little pencil up, laser pointer. There it is. Excuse me. The first part is generally for those who aren't familiar with our firm, and I try to go through that every month. It only takes a few minutes, but it gives you an idea who we are, what we do. And then I'm going to talk about retirement planning. Very, very high level for the most part, the big picture, and then the process. And we'll have plenty of time for Q&A because I don't expect this is going to take more than about 20 minutes today. All right, so what do? First, we are portfolio managers. We serve both retail and other investment advisors, institutions, with our unique value strategy we call the Elite Relative Value Strategy. It's done real well from inception to date, better than its benchmark, which is the S&P 500. And we've never had a losing calendar year. It doesn't mean we never will have a losing calendar year. Seems likely that we will eventually, but it hasn't happened yet, and we work very hard not to lose money. I will say this, that it has its ups and downs just like any other strategy, but we manage it very actively. It's all large cap, multinational, dividend paying stocks. We watch it, and we're evaluating it right now because the market is, again, very strange right now. But we like the volatility. We've got quite a bit of volatility now. We make more money when the market is actually down than we do when it's up. Not instantaneously. It isn't like, immediately things happen. But because we're value oriented, we really like to get into things that have value, and because they're large caps, they're considered relatively safe. So that seems to work out real well for us over time. If you want to check out our history, you can go to our website, and you can click on strategy here, or not click on it, just hover over strategy, and go down to this performance. Click on the performance. That'll take you to another website by Theta Research. Theta Research evaluates, they analyze our information, acquire it from Interactive Brokers directly every month, post our performance, and they have data all the way back to April of 2008. So we're coming up on 10-year history with the strategy now. You'll need to enter your email address at Theta Research, and they send you a link. And then you can get in there and see charts and whatever you want to see, but it's all audited information. So we are investment advisors as well, and we focus a lot, of course, on our core strategy. That's what we're most familiar with. All of our clients have some position in the Elite Relative Value Strategy, but we serve clients with a full suite of investment alternatives, ranging all the way from the well-diversified portfolio, which frankly I don't favor. I have reasons why I think just spreading the money around willy-nilly is a bad idea, or even using a model, using something like the modern portfolio theory. I think over the long run, people tend to underperform the market, and basically the industry makes out well, the government makes out well. But if you're nearing retirement and you're in a well-diversified portfolio and the market takes a major crash, you're going to go down with it, maybe even more so. And I've seen people get hurt by that. Back in 2008, some people got hurt very, very badly. So today we're going to talk about financial planning a little bit, our financial planning practice, specifically with it as it relates to retirement planning. And I'm going to do you a favor right now and turn off this silly camera, if I can figure out how to do it. Let me do a quick look here. Cam off. Now, isn't that a relief? So there you go. Maybe the biggest factor in planning for retirement is your age. Obviously, if you're 25 or 30 years old, your crystal ball is pretty foggy on what's going to happen way out at retirement. So during this period, most people accumulate assets. If they're doing anything for retirement, they're accumulating assets. And the main goal is simply to save and grow assets as much as possible. The best way for most people to do this is using retirement plan, like their employer's 401k plan. Somewhere around 50 years old, the crystal ball begins to clear up a bit. Most people begin to seriously think about retirement. If they haven't saved enough, they may increase their 401k withholding or even take a second job in some cases. This is also when most of us begin to actually do some planning for retirement, at least at a high level. As you retire or actually try to get into retirement, your crystal ball clears a lot. Ideally, this is the perfect scenario, everything is locked in during retirement. You know what your income will be and you put in place plans for all the contingencies. At least that's how we would like to be. Usually it's a bit more complicated than that though. In real life, there are 1,001 things that can go wrong, and they often do go wrong. I've seen illnesses, divorce, even accidental death by one of the spouses or child. Elder needs are very common during this age. If you're 65 years old, your parents are probably in the range of 85 years old, maybe older, maybe a bit younger, but not much. And they are suffering with some of the most difficult years, and that often falls to their children. So it doesn't mean that we shouldn't plan, but it does mean that we should be prepared to revise our plan, because the unexpected can and often does happen. So I'm going to start out here by introducing you to some free tools. This is perhaps my favorite price, free. You don't get much of that these days. These tools will help you do some informal retirement planning regardless of your age. You can access them by simply going to our website, and don't do that now. Follow along with me and I'll show you how it works. But what you would do is you go to www.texaseliteadvisory.com, navigate over here and hover over Active 401k, come down to retirement calculators, click on that, and you will get this, if I can find it here easily. Let's see. Oops, I went too far. There it is. Okay, that's our website. And I'm going to go over here and work on that. I believe everybody can see that okay. So as I said, you go over here to Active 401k, click on Retirement Calculators, and this takes you over to our partner, Active 401k, and they have been generous enough to place these on the web and make them available for everybody. So what you're going to see here is 3 calculators. And they kind of correspond to the phases of your financial life that I just spoke about, but not exactly. So you've got a 401k calculator, and I'm thinking that makes a lot of sense for people that are definitely people that are younger and maybe beginning to think about retirement. You've got a retirement income calculator, which income really is kind of what it's all about. So that's a good thing to have. And then you've got a nest egg calculator. So people who are very, very near or in retirement may have some interest in looking at this calculator. And you can play around with all 3 of them. It doesn't cost a penny to do it. And, you know, as I say, I like it not costing a penny. So here is the 401k. There's some nice instructions over here. Enter your current information, see what's possible. Move the slider. These little sliders move around. Well, let's just go down through here and do something. Let's just say that you are, go down here, current age of 30 years old, right? Boy, wouldn't that be nice? You're going to contribute 10% a year. Probably not realistic. I'm lucky to see 5% from young people. But let's say you're a professional, maybe in in computers or something of that sort, and right today you're making $85,000 a year. You can type that in, or you can use the little slider to do it. Your annual salary, you're expecting to get some decent raises from your boss because he likes you. So let's say 3% a year. That's the smart thing to do up here is to kick up the contribution a bit to the 6%. So let's do that. That would be the right thing to do. So this being the case, slides up pretty nicely over time. With the employer match, you're worth about 2.1 million, which probably will be light given inflation, but still that's not a bad nest egg, and it's something you can easily tweak and work around with. So I think that could be of some benefit to some people that may be on this webinar. Now there's another thing I wanted to mention, and of course there's these instructions here, which is real nice. You can view a printed report if you like. You can also review all of the definitions, and it's a good idea to do that, become knowledgeable about some of the nuts and bolts that go into retirement if you're not already. Next one, retirement income calculator. Especially for those who are, say, 50-something and really approaching retirement. What do we do with this? Well, again, it's the same kind of thing. Now, if you see a little down arrow, this is a little trick. If you're familiar with it, you might not notice, but you see the down arrow, you want to pop that down so you can see the rest of the variables that go into these calculations. But what you want to do is enter your age. In this case, I've said, okay, a 54-year-old. That's nice. The 54-year-old's done real well. He's got about $1 million starting balance. He contributes $3,000 a year. Expects to retire at 67, and years in retirement of 30. His deposits will increase with inflation, so he's going to offset inflation, and the savings is tax deferred. So this is all in 401ks or IRAs or something of that sort, not Roth. And he expects to do a rate of return around 7.5%. That is before retirement. In retirement, he's going to drop back to 4%. He's going to get real conservative. And the tax rate he's going to fall into is about 24%. During retirement, that's going to drop back to 12%, and inflation expects to be just a little under 3%, which probably isn't too bad. And what you get at the end here is the monthly income at age 67 for 30 years, before inflation and after inflation. So if you crank this inflation figure up a bit, what do you expect is going to happen? Definitely you make less if the inflation goes up. And it's good to play around with this a little bit just to get a feel for what the variables are and, what you may be facing, what you need to be thinking about as you go forward. Again, good definitions to work with here. Last, we have the retirement nest egg calculator. And again, it's the same kind of structure. Want to make sure you can see all the variables. I like to see the variables. This is a good one for people that are getting close to retirement. I popped in somebody here that's 63 years old. They expect to retire another 4 years. They've got an income of around 80 grand. We got about 730,000 saved. That's none too much. Expects the income to increase 3% through until he retires at 67. And the income required at retirement is 80%. So he expects 80% of this 80,000 or so is going to be sufficient to meet their needs. Years in retirement, he's going to live 33 more years. That may not be wrong. Our actuarials on life expectancy have gone up about 5 years in the last 10 years, so it's pretty remarkable. People are living longer. Now we got in the section on investment returns, inflation, Social Security, rate of return before retirement, rate of return at retirement, expected rate of inflation, and then include Social Security. At this age, at this time, I think you're safe to include Social Security. It's certainly going to survive one way or another well into the 80s for somebody this age. And when it does correct, which it eventually will, it'll be cranked down. So maybe there'll be a way to make up for that through planning later on. But you would include it in your plan to see if you're going to be able to get by. This being all in the system, we've got a projected nest egg required of $2 million and projected nest egg required after Social Security of $1 million and projected nest egg required after current savings, $381,000. So as you tweak these numbers, let's just say we tweak and say, hey, I'm going to check out early. So I'm going to back off and say, you know what, I'm not going to live that long. So I'm going to be good out for another 20 years or so, and then I'm done. You're probably not that bad off, right? Your excess need isn't so much there. So that's the general idea. You can tweak any of these variables. All the calculations will be made, and they're pretty complicated calculations. It takes into account Social Security numbers, and I think that's really an excellent tool, especially at the price. Okay, let's go back here. All right, next I'm going to walk through a formal retirement planning process. And I've adapted this from Bryant University Certified Financial Planning course. I think it's a good process. I think it's worthwhile. And certainly if you're going to engage a professional planner, they should be able to help you with this. Let's turn this on. Yeah, I got a little pointer back on. So step one, and this is straight out of the Bryant course, the bullets are mine, but choose a planner. Somebody that you may want to do it yourself. And if you have the education and the knowledge of investments and so forth, that's certainly a viable thing. I do my own financial planning, of course. If you can do it for others, I can do it for myself. You could select a broker. And what do I mean by a broker? Well, if you're working with a insurance agent, one that's perhaps focused entirely on annuities, long-term care and things of that sort, these are things that are needed and they're probably part of your retirement plan. But they should not be everything. There's more to it than just what comes from the insurance sector. If you're working with a duly registered advisor, someone who's licensed to sell both securities and insurance and licensed to dispense investment advice, you have a different problem, and that is that the individual is still motivated by commissions. That's how they make their money. Recently, I've come across registered advisors who are also duly registered, and they use registration as a means of engaging clients. So in order to determine that, you have to do some serious due diligence, and it's all available because the government requires people who do this kind of work to register everything. But it does take a little knowledge to drill down and know exactly what the business is and how it works for a particular provider. I came across one that's here in the Dallas area that has a radio show. I won't mention the individual, but when I went through his numbers, I found out that out of his registered investment advisory, he couldn't possibly be making a living. So he would have had to have 3 to 4 times more cash than that. So where's his heart going to be? Is it going to be in the same place that his pocketbook is? Most likely. So that can be a hazard you may want to watch out for. Of course, I'm selling myself here. Texas Elite Advisor is a registered investment advisor, and we are a fiduciary. So we are obligated by law to put our clients' interests first. We have access to virtually everything: insurance products, securities products, alternative investments. But just because I have access to everything doesn't mean I think all of these are great ideas. It takes a little work to get down to what the right thing is for each person. Okay, here's some questions. This is how we start. Step 2, after you've decided if you're going to do it yourself or not, this is the place to start, and that's to ask yourself some high-level questions. Just how costly a lifestyle do you want to lead, or can you lead? Lavish or economical? Well, a lot of people simply have to scale back quite a lot when they get to retirement, but others are in a position to do a lot more. Medical conditions can have a huge effect, so you really have to take that into account. Do I want to stay in my current house, or do I want to move to another location? If you're going to be subject to some kind of dementia or Alzheimer's or something of that sort, you may not have a choice. You may be forced to be placed in a lockdown facility of some kind for your own safety. But as long as you have reasonable health, you should be able to make that choice. Do you want to travel after retirement? That's very popular. People want to travel. Personally, I wouldn't give a flip for it. I spent a ton of time on the road when I was in the tech world, and can live without it. But I do occasionally have to take my wife on trips. And I usually opt for a cruise because that's about the easiest thing I can do. Do you want to have money set aside for your family? In other words, this is really falling into estate planning here. What do you want to pass on to your heirs, or do you not? For many people, very many, it's, I don't want to pass anything on. I've given my kids everything and prepared them, and they need to work it out for themselves. I certainly wouldn't argue with that approach. All right, now we get down to some numbers. And of course, we have a form that you would fill out. Often I'll request brokerage statements, bank statements, other statements, insurance information of that sort, and I'll put that all together on the form in advance of a meeting, and then during the meeting we can pull together the rest of the data. Usually I'll want to do that initially. I'll want to get that basic data together initially, so I know pretty much what I'm talking about. Then step 4, we move on to analysis. Once you have all this great data in our pocket, we start crunching numbers. Actually, this isn't all that difficult anymore because I'm super, cloud-based software now that takes a lot of the number crunching out of the way, and it's just a matter of analyzing more than crunching at that point. Now here's a critical step. This is where we get together and we use what I like to call structured interaction, present and collaborate. I would do some educating on the things that I've discovered. We would explore alternatives, evaluate scenarios, and set a course of action. Step 6, implement the plan. Once we have a good plan in place and we know where we want to go with it, it comes down to just putting your money to work in ways that are going to achieve the goals. Last step, the process ends when you no longer need to plan. And that's when you exit this vale of tears. When you no longer have a need for income, then the plan ends. But prior to that, we pretty much need to get together every year or so, sometimes every 6 months early on, and reassess and maybe retweak and make some changes. So I said 20 minutes. It's 26 minutes after the hour right now, and we're out to the last here. So I've circled back around to choose a planner. And I hope when you do choose a planner, you consider my firm. Would certainly like to help. I'll put my number up there and my email address. I would love to hear from you. Q&A. That's where we're at. If you have anything at all you'd like me to address, please just go ahead and type it into the screen in the chat box. In the meantime, I'm going to put my mic on quiet, and I'm going to go to the disclaimer slide and let that baby run for a little bit so I can stay legal. Okay. How do I get paid? I get paid in one, and I should have mentioned this. I get paid in one of two ways. I can manage your assets, as I mentioned in the beginning, and I would get paid a percentage of assets under management, and that is a negotiable percentage number. High end is 2%. And I would say that larger accounts, it sometimes makes sense to, for me at least, for my business, to take a lower percentage. If I've got a really small account, we still have to do all the same work. And so I would probably be closer to that 2% of assets under management. There's also a number in my ADV, and I can't recall what it was, for a flat fee, and I almost never do this. But if someone wanted me to do the planning for a flat fee, I would be glad to do that. Anything else? If not, I'm going to go ahead and log this thing off, and we're at Thursday, so I guess it's not too early to wish you a pleasant weekend. Uh-oh, Rob popped up another question here. I'll answer that real quick. Is this number the same takeout each month like now? Rob, you're already a client, and there would be no charge other than what you already pay on your assets under management. I provide retirement planning services to all of my clients without any charge other than the management fee that we charge. So I hope I answered that correctly. And I'm going to go ahead and pop off now. Have a great weekend.